Little Nightmares is a unique cross between puzzle platformer and horror adventure. Developed by a relatively small team at Tarsier Studios and published by Bandai Namco, the game was released on April 28th of 2017, and in the years since it's garnered a loyal following and has sold quite well, going so far as to reach the milestone of 12 million copies sold, which is pretty good considering the game is less than 3 hours long. I played this game once a few years back and I remember enjoying my time with it quite a bit, as short as it may have been. And with the third installment recently announced, it seems like a great time to revisit the original. So today we're going back for another playthrough and taking a deep dive into every aspect of Little Nightmares to see just how good or bad this game really is. I'll be exploring and sharing my thoughts on the gameplay mechanics, design decisions, scenery, ambiance, characters, and more. So without further ado, let's get started. I should mention that for this critique, I'm only going to be looking at the main story. But if you all enjoy this video, then perhaps I'll take a deep dive into the DLC in the future. I'll be playing the PlayStation version of the game, and also this isn't a 100% playthrough, so I'm not looking to grab every single collectible. Anyways, we hit the start button, and we're off. We're greeted by a short opening cutscene of a mysterious geisha standing with her back turned in a dark, smoky void. Seems pretty clear from the jump that whoever she is, her vibe is definitely sinister. She does a slow, creepy head turn, and then we jump cut to our protagonist jolting awake from her slumber. She's a little girl in a vibrant yellow raincoat, and as far as I'm aware, they never explicitly state her name, but all the same, her name is Six. And we're straight into the game, which I appreciate. Too many games have way too much preamble. Sometimes you just want to jump in and get started. And right away, I love the environment. Six wakes up on a suitcase in a dark, empty room, where we're given some space to experiment and learn a bit about the controls. I enjoy when a game allows the player to just figure things out on their own, and Little Nightmares gives little to no instructions. It's pretty simplistic after all. How much could there be to figure out? So we start to run around and press a few buttons. Okay, X is jump. Got it. Press a few more buttons, and circle brings out a lighter. I suppose that will come in handy. This place does look quite dark. So we make our way down the dark hallway to start our adventure, and it's not long before we find a lantern. Early on, I was under the impression that lanterns were used for checkpoints, but apparently there's 20 of them scattered throughout the game, and they are simply a collectible. But after lighting it, we head over to a hatch and learn a few more of the game's mechanics. Right trigger grabs objects, and left trigger crouches to fit into tight spaces. Cool. After making our way through a small duct, we drop onto a wooden crate in another room. The camera then pans outwards as we head up a long set of stairs, and we can see that wherever we are, it's massive. Just a moment later, we find another collectible. This time, a small statue in the likeness of the geisha we saw at the start. I wasn't sure what to do with it, so I just kinda knocked it over and left. It wasn't until later I realized that you're meant to pick them up and smash them. Oh well, not really going for collectibles anyways. We crouch our way under a boarded up doorway, and enter a quiet room with chairs dangling gingerly from the ceiling. Not sure what that's all about, but it certainly helps create an unsettling vibe. There's a door with a small window on the far side of the room, and if you look closely, you can see something or someone pass by it. I guess we're not alone here. But with no present danger, we climb our way through a small opening and into another room. And oh shit, there's a dude hanging. Okay then. Well, sorry dude, but I need to borrow this chair to learn another game mechanic. You can push and pull objects to help you navigate this world. And I gotta say, I'm not thrilled with how this mechanic works. You'd think pushing and pulling objects would be fairly simple, but it feels like you're performing some weird balancing act. I try to push the chair, but the game spins me around and says, no, you pull that chair. Alright, fine. We can then climb up onto the chair and reach the doorknob and move on to the next room. We make our way down another hallway and pry open the door of a very ominous looking refrigerator, and out comes a little gnome fella. The gnomes are the third and final type of collectible in the game. We follow it through a small crack in the wall and make our way through a duct to find the gnome just chilling with a lantern. And because he's adorable, we give him a little hug. I believe this is how the gnome is marked as collected. Collectibles are always a neat idea, as long as they're not overdone, like Donkey Kong 64 for instance. They add a bit of replay value to the game, but at the same time they can become a bit distracting if you're the type of gamer that, once you see a collectible, it becomes nearly impossible to progress through any room without checking every single nook and cranny. With not much else going on in there, we make our way back and climb up the opened refrigerator. We continue on, but then I hear something drop behind Six. Upon turning around to check it out, we are murdered by a leech. That was my fault for getting too close. But I like the fact that the developers show you one leech in a somewhat safe setting just so you can see what it is and that it is indeed hostile before they go about throwing more of them at you. This time we ignore the first leech and cross the gap. And as we continue down the path, yep, more leeches. They drop from the ceiling, but it's easy enough to weave between them. We reach the next room and pull a lever to open a door. And they are some persistent little guys, but I doubt they can jump with no legs, so we cross a gap to safety. As we enter the next room, the door slams shut behind us. Just a little tension building. With nowhere to go, we pry a board off the next doorway and proceed. But it's not long before a board breaks beneath our feet and we fall down to a room below. And yup, it's a leech party down here. I like the escalation of interactions with this enemy. First they show you one, then a few more that are easy to avoid, and then they literally pull the floor out from under you and put you in a rather overwhelming situation with them. So we put our lighter to good use and make our way through the crowd of leeches to safety. And just out of curiosity, I turned back to see if they would again keep pursuing me, but this time they did not. So we continue on, crossing a gap, climbing a makeshift ladder, and making our way up some stairs. Eventually we find a closed door at one end of the room, and a crank at the other end. Upon turning the crank, you can tell from the light penetrating into the room that the door has opened. So we take a gingerly stroll back to the door and... we didn't make it in time. Maybe there's something we're missing. After taking a moment to again experiment with the controls, I've taught myself that square is the run button. Yay! Now we should make it no problem. However, I will say, I'm fairly certain I pressed square at the very start of the game, and I just didn't notice that it made 6 run faster. The difference between her regular walk and sprint is pretty insignificant, but that's just a small complaint. We use the crank again, and with our newfound sprinting skill we make it through the door in a nick of time. I notice a small hatch in the next room and we open it to find another gnome. He makes a break for it, so we follow its path through a small hole in the far wall. And again we see some lovely camera work as the shot pans way out to show just how tiny we really are. And we see a mysterious man above the way pulling some kind of metal crate behind him. Wonder if we'll see more of him in the future. After climbing up a Rapunzel-style bedsheet rope, we enter a small room where we light another lantern and then make our way through a creepy wooden door. And upon entering, 2 things are made abundantly clear. We are in the shithouse, and also those bars blocking the doorway are clearly electrified and will most likely hurt us. But just to be sure, I try it out anyways. Yep, that's electric. So we need to find a way to shut off the power or get around. After trying and failing to throw a roll of toilet paper at the bars, the game calls me a dumbass and tells me to use the right stick to look around. I will say I don't necessarily mind a game dropping hints to help out a stuck player, but in this case it only waited about 15 seconds before telling me what to do. I'm sure I would have figured it out on my own if it'd given me a minute, but after looking upwards we see the wire from the doorway goes across the ceiling and behind the door we came in. So we shut the door, revealing a lever, and after positioning a crate of toilet paper, we jump up and give it a pull, shutting the power off, and immediately we hear the sound of a timer. Well, you don't have to be a genius to figure out what that means, so we hightail it through the bars and into the next room. I couldn't help but feel like there was a generous amount of time to make it through. We goof around for a bit on the seesaw and the merry-go-round before realizing that at the far end of the room is another electrified doorway. So that's why we were given a generous amount of time. After quickly figuring out that the seesaw can be used to gain access back to the previous room, we again pull the lever, and this time we're running all the way, making it through both doorways with just a moment of time to spare. I enjoy the slight subversion there. I went from thinking I figured it out to realizing I may have just screwed myself, to then fully accomplishing the goal. A fun little puzzle. The next room we've entered is a hallway of doors. I tried most of them, but none of them seem to open. So we continue. We enter an open area, and on comes a light from an eyeball on the wall, and it kills me pretty much instantly. Kinda bullshit if I'm being honest. I'm sure if it had given me another moment to get back to safety, I would have realized that the light hurts you, but nonetheless we try again. The light shifts from one side of the room to the other, so our goal is pretty obvious. Stay in the shadows and move when the coast is clear. Easy. We then climb our way up some junk and continue on. I head left and find what I assume to be is some kind of secret room. There's another geisha collectible, but like previously I didn't realize they were meant to be picked up and smashed. That's my fault for not experimenting with it more. And while the room is definitely creepy, there's seemingly nothing to do, so we head back to the right and on to the next spectacle. And upon entering the room, the music and sound effects are clearly telling us to hide. And there he is, Stubby Legs McLongarms. This guy is creepy as hell, and a small but important detail that is lost to the viewer is the vibrations from the controller. It radiates short pulses like that of a racing heartbeat, and it really goes a long way to sell the tension of the moment. The lighting here is a bit on the dim side, but looking closely you can see that he wears a piece of cloth over most of his face. This man is blind.
That bitch is blind as a bat.
Hopefully we can use that to our advantage in avoiding him. And god, what a creepy room. Lots of child-sized beds with dark mystery babies writhing around in them. Makes you wonder who that man is and what the hell he's doing. We get a little relief as the next room is well lit. Not much at our disposal here, so we climb up some crates, make our way across some shelves and into another duct in the wall. I love the brief walk through the duct there. It gives you just enough time to think about what you saw and the possibilities of what's coming next. Excellent tension building. We drop into the next room and, oh, I think 6 needs a Snickers bar or something. We continue on and, girl, I told you to eat before we came. We continue on and find a shadowy child behind the bars of what looks to be a cafeteria. Luckily, the child seems to realize that we are famished, actually, and offers us some food. Well, good. Now 6 is well fed, and I'm sure there's nothing more to that. So we make an exit to the next room. And yep, that's a noose, but nothing to see here, so we press on. Through the gross-looking showers, across a not-so-OSHA-approved catwalk, where we find another electrified doorway. Can't go through there, so we head upwards. After some careful platforming, we fall to our death. After some careful platforming, we climb onto a large collection of crates dangling from the ceiling by a chain. And here, I was honestly stumped for a minute. I looked around for levers or buttons, something that would make the crate move, but nothing. Then I realized that you can just simply climb up the chain. Not sure if that was obvious or not, but let me know your opinions on that part. But nonetheless, we climb all the way up to the top and jump off to a higher platform. We climb up and find 2 levers, and after pulling the first one, up comes the big crate on the chain. I was right after all, just got a little bit ahead of myself. Though that does make me feel like this part was a bit predictable. The other lever makes the crate slide back and forth, left to right. I've played enough puzzle games to figure this one out pretty quickly. Slide to the left, slide to the right. Before it makes it all the way, crank the lever back to the left, jump on, and enjoy the ride. We then use the chain once more to climb up to another higher platform. The next room has another electrified doorway, but we can plainly see a lever high up on the wall. Luckily there are some handy filing cabinets nearby, so the solution is pretty obvious. Grab the drawers, pull them out, and make a staircase. The difficulty here is pretty much non-existent. It's just trial and error, seeing which drawers will open and which ones won't. We climb up and give the lever a good tug, and out goes the power. Luckily there's no timer sound effect this time. In the next room we find another lantern, and free a gnome from a metal cage. Then we proceed to push a large weight down the hole, and up comes the noose. And after taking a ride down, we realize that this was the noose we saw earlier. We run back through the showers, this time with leeches to chase us, but as long as you keep moving they are a total non-issue. Now we just make our way through the previous electrified doorway and get out of here. And it's another searing eyeball light. This time they've given us enough space to react and hide in the shadows before getting roasted alive. But they've upped the difficulty slightly. The room is rocking back and forth, causing a trash can on wheels to also rock back and forth. Again, the solution seems pretty obvious. Run with the trash can to remain in the cover of darkness. I think a little more leniency here would have been nice. I stepped out ever so slightly and was frozen in place and roasted to death. Not a big deal, I just mistimed the sprint. So we try again, but I have a different idea. I couldn't help but notice that right underneath the eye is a quite shadowy area. Maybe we can hug the wall and make it across. And look at that, we can! I love it when a game gives multiple options in solving a puzzle, and rewards a little creativity. I'm sure if the developers hadn't intended that, they would have made the light cast all the way back to the far wall. We make it out into another giant open space. As we begin across the catwalk, the platform starts to retract, and obviously it's time to haul ass or die. So we sprint and barely cross the gap. And as the other side retracts as well, you have mere seconds to figure out that you must climb the crate to reach the higher platform or fall to your death. I suppose if you were caught completely off guard then it might feel a little cheap. But I do love that they thrust you into this moment where you have to make some split-second decisions. But we make it through to the next room and the door locks behind us. Always a good sign. But it was nothing to worry about because the next door opens, letting 6 and 2 little gnome friends through and out of the prison. If I'm being honest, I only knew it was called the prison because the trophy popped afterwards. Oh boy, a new fresh hell awaits us. We make our way up a few long flights of stairs, passing a locked door and entering a room that appears to be someone's home. A gnome goes running off to the right, and upon investigating we can see a false wall as well as another lever. So we jankily push a suitcase across the room and give the lever a pull. And out drops a bed with some leather straps across it. Not creepy at all. As we start to climb up we can see a picture hanging of the stumpy long-armed man we encountered a little while ago. Judging from all the very tall dresser drawers, this must be his living quarters. After jumping onto the table, we find a large key. Well, large relative to 6 anyways. And I'll be honest, I ran around this room for minutes just being lost on where to go next, and how to open this false wall on the right side of the room. until finally realizing that I can simply just push it open. The developers did convey this well. They showed a slight gap in the top right side of the door, but I simply just didn't notice. Perhaps a few grimy handprints on the right side would have helped to better draw the eyes there, like they did on the refrigerator a while back. So we proceed through and use the key to unlock a door. And we enter a room with nothing but a monkey doll with clapping cymbals. After googling, apparently the proper name for this toy is Jolly Chimp. Learned something new today. We can pick him up and throw him, and upon hitting the ground, the Jolly Chimp will start to clap his cymbals, making a fair bit of noise. We pick him up again and throw him into a button on the wall, calling an elevator. Once inside, we throw him again into the button, and down we go. Six and the monkey then exit the elevator, and oh no, again we have hunger pangs. Well, we certainly can't eat monkey, so we pick him back up and continue. After a few more bouts of debilitating hunger, we enter a room with some rats feasting on a lump of flesh in a cage. Perhaps we'll just set down Monkey for a moment and have a quick bite. And yep, we're trapped by the long-armed man, and he took my monkey. We awaken in a room full of other mostly dead children in metal cages, with the man taking one of the cages with him for some reason. When the coast is clear, we do some jostling around and knock our cage to the ground, freeing 6. We then pull another cage across the floor to reach a rope dangling from the ceiling. The weight of 6 causes the door to open, but upon letting go, it again slams shut. I had a few ideas. Maybe find something heavy to attach to the rope to weigh it down, or shove something underneath the door to keep it pried open. I was stuck for a minute trying to figure out the solution, and again some text popped up at the bottom of the screen explaining that you can just swing from ropes. I understand they want to mitigate frustration, but I was having fun trying to figure it out on my own. So in this moment they kind of took that joy away from me. And as far as I'm aware, there isn't any way to turn off hints. Kind of a bummer. But after a few swings, we make it under the door before it closes. Now we're trapped in an empty room, but we're able to climb the door that closed behind us and reach a higher level. We crawl our way through a small opening and drop down into a new room. And there he is! The stumpy long-armed man is hard at work wrapping up dead children and placing them on a conveyor of meat hooks. As you do. We try to sneak past, but he lets out a loud sniffing sound and begins searching around. Clearly, this guy's other senses have been heightened due to his lack of eyesight. Looks like we need to be extra careful. We stay still and as far away as possible while he meanders off to the right, making slow progress until we reach an open cage that we must climb over, watching cautiously as the blind man makes his way back to his workstation. From there, we make a mad dash to the right of the room and crawl our way through another small opening. In here we find a crank and a socket to stick it in. As we start the crank, a hatch begins to open. But the creaking metal noises alert the man, so we again make a dash down the hatch, barely escaping him. I love how tense these moments are. The timing is fair, but it's pretty tight, and you have to use all of your sense and judgment to stay out of danger. We're now navigating another small duct. And did he just throw a shoe at me?
Who throws a shoe? Honestly.
We drop down into a suitcase floating on top of a sea of shoes. Not what I expected, but pretty neat all the same. We jump on in and start to wade through the chest-high shoes towards the next suitcase. But something is barreling towards us. Something sinister lurks within the shoes. Luckily, we make it to safety, and whatever it was has left us alone for the moment. But there's more. Another jump, and again we make it to safety. One more long swim through the shoes, and we make it out to safety in a nick of time. I love this part. No explanation for what it is down there, no need for it, just another creepy thing looking to kill you. And we never see it again after this. We continue down another dimly lit hallway, and oh shit, there he is. Time to run. This is where the importance of slides are really hammered home. If you hit the left trigger while you're running, you'll do a sick little slide, and it's perfect for quickly getting underneath the pipe blocking the way. We make it into an elevator, but with no way to activate it, we find a small box to hide in, and just pray we don't get found. The blind man presses the button for us, and it looks like we're going for a ride together. As the elevator moves, the man feels around trying to locate 6, but luckily a gnome comes running out and lures the blind man away from us. Safety again for the moment. But once again, upon entering the room, the door shuts behind us. The object in this room is to move the large toy box off of a flimsy floor panel, which causes it to swivel and make a way down for you. But I feel a bit misled. You can see, I try pushing the toy box from a few different angles and it barely budges, leading me to believe that that was not the solution. So I farted around for a minute looking for something else to interact with, only to find nothing and come back to the toy box for another try. This time apparently I pushed it from the correct side because it actually begins to slide. It's just a bit frustrating that you have to interact with the object in exactly the way the developers intended. In this instance, I had the right idea, it was just a quirk of the game that was preventing me from progressing. But once it's moved, the board swivels downwards and we go with it. We're in a tight crawl space now, and we can see that just above us, the long-armed man lurks around menacingly. I happen upon another geisha doll, and this time, after learning how to throw objects, we do it the right way, and give her a good smashing. With nowhere to go on the right, we head back and find some climbable boards that lead us up into the room with the blind man. After waiting for him to leave the room, we grab our monkey buddy and give him a good toss, remembering that once he hits the ground, he'll begin clapping his cymbals. The distraction works. As the man comes back into the room, we do the old switcheroo and crawl into the next room. We make our way past his collection of dolls and up a large dresser. But of course, something falls and makes a loud noise, and we are again being pursued. But even those long arms can't reach up here, so we're safe to crawl into another duct. After exiting the duct, we see the man climbing his way out of the new room we just entered. God, this guy really gets around. There's a flimsy door at the far end that Six pushes over, and down with it goes a grandfather clock. Loud enough to alert anyone nearby, I'm sure. And yep, there he is. Luckily he brought a few extra pairs of sneakers. While he's searching around, we quietly take one and throw it to hit another elevator button on the wall. But of course he hears this, so it's time to haul ass. He gives chase down the hallway, and honestly, I don't know how I made it on my first try. I felt like I was floundering and getting stuck on objects, but all the same, we made it. We're in a library of sorts now. We climb all the way up a large bookcase and jump onto a piano dangling from the ceiling. The jumps here are pretty simple to make. The piano swings back and forth, so it's just a matter of timing it appropriately. But of course, we're not done with the blind man yet. We follow him along, noting a socket in the wall where another crank can be inserted. I guess we'll be coming back here. The long-armed man is searching around below, so we climb up and head across the tops of the bookshelves. And of course, there's lots of loose objects to knock off and give away our position. But again, Monkey comes in clutch with the distraction and buys us some time to make it all the way across. After narrowly making our way down and back up into the next room, we can see the crank we've been looking for. But getting out of here is another puzzle that needs to be solved. The rule of thumb I like to use for puzzles is, the thing that stands out to you most is most likely the answer. Therefore, I see a television with a button on the front of it. We climb up to grab an item to throw at the button, and nothing happened. Let's try it again. There we go. The television comes on and starts making noise. A good distraction to get the man to open the door and give us our escape. The blind man comes to investigate the noise, and we use the opportunity to make a break for it. Running all the way back around the bookcases to the socket in the wall we saw earlier, we install the crank and start to turn it. Something tells me that man is going to come running on those stumpy little legs, so we better hurry. The camera pans out and up comes that dangling piano. Again we make some well-timed jumps across and crawl through another hole in the wall. Here we find a short railway with a gap in the middle and a spout of hot steam rising through it. Seems pretty obvious that I should not touch the steam, so we jump across and find a door with a knob barely out of reach. Okay, let's investigate what else is here. Well, after heading back to the left, we find a minecart on the track. We pull it all the way across, making sure to stop to avoid being burnt to death by the steam. And once we've made it back to the right, we can use it to reach the doorknob. A very simple puzzle, but it does a good job at giving you a slight moment of peace between the anxiety-inducing moments of being chased by the murderous lunatic. We enter the next area and see a giant gaping pit, with bodies on the meat conveyor sailing by below. I love the camera work in this game. It has moments where it really shines at showing just how grand and giant this world is, while making you feel so small and helpless. We make our way across the rickety platform and into another cramped crawl space area. And I suppose I was moving forward a bit too willy-nilly because the long-armed man just grabbed my ass out of nowhere. Okay, let's try that again, but a bit more carefully. He reaches his arm in and keeps feeling around, so timing is key. We wait for him to be slightly out of reach before passing. We continue on, following the rats, but as we drop down again, we are running for our life from this man. But luckily, we slide under a closing door to safety. In my opinion, this is the hardest part of the game. We're trapped in a small room with the man's long arms reaching around trying to grab us. The object is to run up to the cage holding up the door and pull off the two bars supporting it. But God, is it tricky. I died here over and over and over and over again. I think the trick here is to make sure that both of his arms are distracted. This can be done by jumping onto the objects in both the far corners of the room. And if you get the timing right, you'll have just enough time to run over to the cage and pull off one of the bars. Do the same thing a second time, and off comes his arms. Good riddance, you prick. Now we can climb up and through a small hatch that opened up. We head through another duct and we have successfully completed the lair. We continue through another duct and up a ladder and see that we've made it to the meat hook conveyor we saw earlier. I love that they showed this to us previously with it being out of reach, but now it's something we'll get to interact with. After taking a quick look at where the hooks are coming from, we grab onto one and take a little ride. Again, we get a great shot of the seemingly huge world we inhabit, as well as a small glimpse of our next adversary. And boy is he gross. After landing on a huge pile of bodies, Six again feels the hunger growing within her. If it wasn't clear already, something strange is going on with her. We continue on until we find an unfortunate rat caught in a trap.
I'm a rat! I'm trapped in a...
And we have lunch. Yummy! Well, hopefully that keeps her satisfied. We now find ourselves in a sort of meat sorting room. We push over a shelf to make ourselves a ramp, and continue through a set of double doors with an ominous trail of blood leading up to it. Again, we push a cart to give us the height we need to make a jump through a small window. There's nothing challenging here, just simply taking a stroll to the next spectacle. But I do appreciate these quiet moments of just traversing the terrain. I feel they help the more anxious and desperate moments of the game to feel even more compelling. We take a quick jaunt through the pantry and suddenly we're in Hell's Kitchen. I think it goes without saying that we don't want to make our presence known to this very disgusting and strange looking chef. But I sort of just stand there like a goon and immediately get grabbed. Let's try that again with a bit more cunning. I love the way that the kitchen is laid out. You have short spaces underneath the counter to utilize as a safe place to hide, and the key is to move between them at opportune moments. So we watch the chef as he meanders around performing his tasks, and sees an opportunity to make some progress to the right. And again, this part is lost to the viewer, but it's crucial to note how much of a factor the vibrations of the controller play in heightening the stress of certain encounters. It's like you're feeling Six's heartbeat racing as she's watching the scene unfold. And of course, as we just about make it to the next room, the chef moves himself along to that room as well. But the coast is clear for the moment, so we take a quick dash to a safe spot and await our next opportunity to move forward. I will say the chef is not as intimidating as the long-armed man. If the chef sees you, you can just run to safety and he will eventually give up and go back to work, while the previous antagonist was a bit more persistent. I like that there's just a gnome in here with us, like he's showing us the way. Eventually we make it to the far right side of the room, and of course the door is locked. I didn't see a key anywhere as we made it across the kitchen, so we decide to climb the cabinet at the far end and see where that takes us. And we barely make it up there. Luckily the chef is a bit of a slow one. And it looks like we're on the right track, because we climb onto the rafters and very carefully follow them all the way to the back wall, where we climb a few cages and find another small opening to crawl through. And what the? Double toilet. Not sure what to make of that, but it's certainly interesting. I climb up to demonstrate what a daring double dump might look like. We exit the bathroom and it seems we are in another living quarters. Eerily quiet. We follow another gnome down the hallway and enter a dark bedroom. I love this moment because it causes a mix of confusion and dread. I went from thinking, how did that chef get up here and fall asleep so quickly, to, oh shit, there's two of them. We climb up and find a key hanging. Of course, the sound of it dropping causes chef number 2 to wake up. But we hide under the bed just a split second before the lights come on. Luckily the chef leaves, so we're in the clear for now. We activate the lever and head back downstairs with the key. Now we need to sneak through the kitchen once more. I think it would have been more thrilling if both the chefs were down here now. It would give a different experience of sneaking back through the kitchen with even more of a threat to getting caught. But nothing really changes, and we make it to the right again and unlock the door. We make our way through a short hall and climb through a small opening into a room where we can see how the sausage is made. From here, we can see a large grinder in the center of the room, and a small opening that is far out of reach on the right side. Clearly, another puzzle. So let's see what we have to work with. Well, upon climbing up and pulling a rope, a hatch opens up in the ceiling and drops some meat into the grinder. We turn the grinder crank and out poops a sausage. Only one though. I don't think that's going to be quite enough. Clearly, we need to make more. So we climb up into the dumbwaiter and head up to the meat freezer. Our goal is to find more meat to grind. So we look around and find a cabinet to climb up. From there we can jump across a few meat hooks and knock down a slab of meat. Well, the game already showed us that one chunk of meat makes one sausage, and I think it's safe to assume that this game is going to follow the golden rule of threes, so we'll need to find one more chunk of meat. I head back down and poop out our second sausage. I thought perhaps the last chunk of meat was back down here in the lower room, but no such luck, so we head back up to see if we missed it somewhere. And we did. Shrouded in shadow in the corner of the room is the final chunk of meat. It's funny how obvious it was, but the darkness around it made it quite difficult to see. I even have the brightness turned up a moderate amount. We pull it to the hatch and head down to poop out the final sausage. This gives us a long enough chain of sausages that we can swing our way to the opening at the far side. As far as puzzles go, the execution on this one is pretty mid. Once you figure out what needs to be done, it's just a matter of looking around until you find the pieces. Though I do have to give points to the uniqueness of the situation. Can't say I've ever done a sausage puzzle before. We head through yet another duct and drop into a meat cooler, with bodies hanging from hooks, of course. We pull the elevator lever to proceed down, but out comes one of the chefs. I love the surprise here. So we make a mad dash and find a crate to hide in. We sit quietly as the chef stands close by, filling his pockets with cheese. Once we have an opportunity, we make a run for the elevator and head upstairs, but the chef clearly saw us and is not happy about it. I just had a feeling the chef would be coming up the elevator right after us. Luckily, we're given a convenient duct to hide in. The chef seems to have a very poor attention span because as we enter the next room, he's already back to work, chopping up some mystery meat. Again, we use tables and counters as cover to sneak our way across the room without alerting him to our presence. And if you're paying close attention, you'll see a key sitting upon his chopping block. Definitely gonna need that for something. The plan is simple. Sneak into the next room, turn on the grinder to distract him, make our way back into the first room, grab the key, and leave this place. We're now down at the lower level where we used the key to open another locked door. The next door is jammed, so after looking around for a moment, we use the laundry chute and drop down even lower, narrowly escaping the pursuing chef. Not much to see down here. It's dark, grimy, and I'm sure it stinks. And I like the fact that there's always a few meaningless objects lying around that you can pick up and throw around for fun. And in doing so, we happen upon another geisha statue. We're able to climb up the wall and into another crawl space. It's time for more tense encounters with the chefs. This time, they're both here. Now we're in the dishwashing room and we need to sneak our way past them yet again. But I like that they heighten the intensity of the situation by having both of the chefs present. However, like stated previously, these guys are pretty dumb and slow. I get spotted, but pretty easily outmaneuver them. And then I simply wait for them to lose interest before moving on. Once we've reached the next room, we climb up and push a lever, which reverses the direction of the meat hooks passing by overhead. Now it's just a matter of getting up there. Looks like we need to head back again. As I start to head back, I repeatedly step on some broken plates, which make enough noise to alert them to my position. I guess I didn't learn from playing The Last of Us. But still, that's a nice touch. It's pretty easy to sneak around, so having some booby traps sprinkled around adds a little bit more depth to the experience. But after hiding for another moment, we sneak our way back through the dishwashing room, taking great care to avoid the fatties. Once we've reached the left side of the room, we can then climb up a shelf of dishes and make a risky jump onto one of the meat hooks. And again, we go for a fun little ride. But they're not quite as stupid as they seem. They see six gliding across the room and take to chasing us. As we enter the other room, I failed to realize I should have let go of the hook and let myself fall right into the hands of one of them. Oops. That was obvious. It was just a goof on my part. After respawning, we start hauling ass. Chef number 2 comes busting through the door, so 6 runs as fast as those little legs will carry her, sliding up the table, avoiding some thrown wine bottles, and quickly timing a jump onto the hooks to get out of there. And with that, we wave goodbye to the chefs and head off to the next area. The kitchen is complete. We've clearly made it somewhere noteworthy now. The camera again pans outwards and we're shown to be in a ginormous cavern of sorts. We continue along and climb up a long ladder towards the light. And wow, what a reveal. This entire game, we've been aboard a massive ship. Only now do we step outside to see it. For the keen observer, this may have been obvious from the start. It explains why so many of the objects seem to sway back and forth, like the garbage can or the piano, and perhaps this is why Six is wearing the yellow raincoat. But if I'm being honest, my first time playing this, I didn't pick up on it at all. I just assumed I was in some strange industrial dystopian fantasy world, and didn't put much thought into anything past that. As we step out into the sunlight, we can see large silhouettes boarding the ship off in the distance. They've already shown us our adversaries twice now in shots similar to these, so I take it we will be facing off against these guys at some point in the near future. As we start to climb another very long chain, the camera work shines once more, zooming slowly outward, revealing just how absolutely massive this world truly is. And then another very smooth zoom all the way back in. Upon making it to the top, we carefully cross a metal beam. and get a much better look at the people in the distance. A whole line of dietary challenged persons making their way into the ship. Wonder what their deal is. We continue along the pathway, observing the single file line from above as we go. And as we begin to climb upwards, there she is, the sinister looking geisha from the brief cutscene at the start, watching over her guests as they enter. We do some careful platforming across the ceiling lights, and make our way through a cracked door on the far side. The presentation through this section is really top notch. The gameplay is basically just traversal, but there's so much to look at and wonder about. Why do these people look like this? Why are they here? Where are they going? Where are we going? And what is up with that geisha woman? Well, we're gonna get some answers pretty soon. At the very least, we find out what the chefs were working on. These people are here to eat. Raw meat, apparently. This guy is so focused I couldn't even get his attention. The next room is a different story, however. Upon entering, another feasting man seems very upset with seeing us. He flings a table and crushes 6, which gave me a good laugh even though I died. I just was not expecting that. Let's give that another shot. This time we go at it with a bit more haste. This guy is surprisingly quick for a man of his size, but we're still able to outrun him and make it to the next room. We climb up onto a table, avoiding another hungry patron, and shamble up a tower of plates, grabbing a lantern above and swinging back and forth, narrowly avoiding the clutches of your mom. I remember this part very well from my first playthrough of Little Nightmares. I remember it because I found it incredibly frustrating. The idea and imagery here is amazing for sure. You've got to weave between all the short stubby arms trying to grab at you. Sounds fun, but it takes a very precise path to make it through unscathed. Sometimes it feels like they were nowhere near you, but they suck you in like you're magnetic. But to my shock and surprise, we make it through on the very first try, and I fumbled the jump to move on. Well, there's no way I'll get that lucky again. There we go. And now we climb up further. We make a few more jumps and enter another dining room. These lads seem to be minding their own business. That is until they see 6 jumping over a railing. We book it to the next room, and out of curiosity I do a little twirl to see how far behind us they were. Plenty of time to spare on that one. We swing across another gap and enter what looks to be the main mess hall. As we walk forward, another big fella blocks our way and starts chasing us back. We give him the old rope-a-dope and jump over the top of him. We head through a small dark room and then squeeze our way into a nicely lit hallway. Finally, a moment of peace after all that. And oh shit, the chef is back. He chases us down the hallways and into the bathroom where we find a cozy little hiding spot. And after he gets bored and leaves, we are trapped in the bathroom. But coincidentally, as the chef slammed the door, a small jar and a roll of toilet paper fell to the ground. Well, going with my previous statement that the most obvious object tends to be the solution, I see 2 things. Throwable objects and a mirror. Maybe y'all just... Yep, that worked. We're out of here. And wait a minute. Only now do I realize the implication of having a chair behind what I assume is a 2-way mirror. Creepy. After continuing through another duct and running across some pipes, we make it back down from where we came and head back into the elevator. And we're heading up. And this part absolutely blew my mind the first time I played this game. Things start off quietly enough as you're running along, but in no time all hell breaks loose. The fatties are coming through every door imaginable, and quickly forming a mass of tumbling calories that will easily consume 6 if she gets too close. And they are not easy to outrun. The tension here is unparalleled. We try our best to take a clean path through the hallways, climbing over obstacles and avoiding the reach of even more enemies. And we make it to safety in a nick of time. I love the detail of one of them tumbling off the edge. Can't say I feel bad for them, but god, this part is just too good. I played it over and over on my first playthrough because I was just mesmerized by everything about it. The tense music, the animations of the pursuing fatties, everything in the background breaking and falling apart, all of it works together to make an absolutely standout moment that sticks with you long after you're done playing. We keep pressing on, but again the hunger comes on strong. 6 once again doubles over from what appears to be intense stomach pains. And upon this happening for a second time, the lights start to flicker on and off. Something tells me this is more than what it appears to be. But luckily, after entering the next room, one of our gnome friends offers us a delicious sausage in this trying time. But instead of a sausage, 6 grabs the poor little gnome and rips the thing's throat out with her bare teeth and begins devouring it. Poor little guy. This raises a lot of questions, obviously. Why is she so hungry? And why did the lights start to flicker? Who turns down a sausage in favor of gnome? Well, we are nearing the end of the short game, so I imagine we'll have some answers soon enough. We climb up a box, follow a short path, and head up a ladder. And there she is again. The geisha once more is just out of reach, and we find ourselves in a sort of pottery room with nothing but a few throwable items and the elevator that the geisha left through. So we throw a can at the elevator button and head inside, completing the guest area chapter. We exit the elevator and it looks like we've made it somewhere a bit more elegant. The first thing I notice is a broken mirror on the wall, and strange eyeballs on pretty much everything. We head up some stairs and find an eyeball door with a lock on it. But since we don't have a key, we continue upstairs to see what else we can find. And at the top, we find an open door. There she is! The geisha is staring into a broken mirror, brushing her hair, and humming an eerie, haunting melody. And like a dumbass, I waltz right in, and yep, she ain't friendly. This time we try again with a bit more couth. We sneak our way past her and into the next room, which appears to be her private bedroom. Looks pretty ordinary, but again, that eyeball vase on the nightstand really stands out to me. So we climb up and push it over like some kind of jerk cat. Yep, there's the key, but she definitely heard that, so I grab it quickly and hide under the bed. There's so much tension in just waiting for her to come investigate, but expectations are subverted because she never does. We head back from where we came and the geisha is just gone. I noticed that she left a little statue on the vanity, so we give it a good chuck and then head back downstairs to use the key. The walk back is terrifying because of how eerily quiet it is, and the very purposeful use of mannequins in the shadows can give a subtle jump scare. We head through the door and get another little jump scare as it slams behind us, locking Six in darkness. Again, I love the use of the mannequins. The geisha could be hiding anywhere amongst them, and she is. We see her glowing white face coming towards us, so we haul ass and barely make it to safety by sliding under a cabinet. Six runs through a short, creepy hallway until we enter a very large room again, filled with mannequins. I'm not sticking around to get killed in here, so we head all the way to the right and find a small opening. After prying off a board, we head into another small room. There's lots of broken mirrors in here, but we find a small one intact on a table. Well, every mirror she has is broken, so then perhaps that's her weakness. We grab the mirror and head back into the big room. You guessed it, it's final boss time. As we enter the room, we can see the geisha standing in a dim spotlight in the center of the room. But upon approaching, the lights go out and she disappears in a puff of smoke. Not creepy at all. The object here is to stand in the spotlight and face the mirror towards her as she tries to attack. Upon successfully doing so, the geisha will be stunned and knocked back. I wish I could say this was a challenging fight, but once you know what to do, it's pretty simple. We move to the next spotlight and hit her with it again. I do appreciate that they switched things up a little bit. The geisha resorts to the old fake-out tactics and moves back and forth feigning attack before actually coming in. It's enough to keep you on your toes and possibly have you facing the wrong way when she does come in for an attack, but the tension of the fight has me on high alert, so I'm ready to swivel that mirror around at a moment's notice. I also like the detail that every time you land a hit, Six is also knocked back onto her ass, and it takes her a good moment to get back to her feet. It's almost like it's taking something out of her as well. But after landing the final blow, the mirror shatters and it all goes black. Six then awakens in a daze and slowly makes her way over to the critically injured geisha. And the hunger strikes again. Six rips her throat out and consumes her flesh like it was something to do. A mysterious black energy consumes Six and it slowly fades out. But when it fades back in, we're now in an elevator, and upon opening, we're in a very large room. Creepy music begins to play as we walk forward with a new camera perspective. We're now following behind Six, and we get to see just what she's become. She walks past more patrons and sucks the life right out of them, leaving a trail of lifeless bodies in her wake. Well, I'm no lore expert, but I think it's pretty safe to say we did not become the good guy in the end. The giant door at the far end opens, and Six heads up the stairs towards the sunlight. And with that, we have officially completed the story of Little Nightmares. So, what the hell happened anyway? Well, I'm sure there's loads of YouTube videos explaining the plot and lore in depth, and I have not watched any of those. So here's what I interpret. I assume Six was either imprisoned, or more than likely, snuck her way onto the ship to intentionally seek out the geisha. The reasons for that, as far as I know, are unknown, but it's pretty clear that everyone you encounter is up to no good and knows that you're not supposed to be there. Six is clearly driven by her insatiable hunger. We saw it progress through the game as she went from eating meat, to rats, to gnomes, and eventually the geisha herself. I believe that was her final goal, to become whatever it is the geisha was, able to suck the life straight out of whoever opposes her. Maybe they were connected somehow, maybe it's a continuous cycle, hard to say for sure. But Six left with some new powers, and I guess the world is her oyster. As for why all those fat patrons were boarding the ship and eating raw meat, I really haven't a clue. Maybe the geisha had some mind control over them and they were also victims of her, but it made for a fun visual anyway, and I guess that's what matters most. And yeah, I have to say, this game is stellar from start to finish. It's just unfortunate that the time from start to finish is so damn short. Like I've said, I played this game once a while back, so I had some idea of where to go and what to do, but I took things pretty leisurely, and goofed up quite a few times and died. So this was by no means a speedrun by any definition. And even with all that, my total playtime was barely over 2 hours. 2 hours and 7 minutes to be precise. If this was a $60 game, that would be a gigantic upset. People simply would not have it. But Little Nightmares is not $60. I believe it usually goes for $20, and upon checking, it's actually on sale for $5 at this very moment. My point is, Little Nightmares is short as hell, but it does a lot in that short amount of time. We traversed through a massive ship, we solved puzzles, and we took on multiple adversaries. And these weren't even one-off encounters, these were ordeals. That's what I love about this game. Every section has its own unique boss, I guess for lack of a better word. You're shown who they are at the start, just to plant the seeds of fear in you, and from there you go about eluding them, and sometimes even taking them down a peg. This game never says a word, and it tells its story through the events and the landscape itself. They've packed so much detail into every little room. Every time you enter a new area, you wonder about where you are, what has happened here, and where you're heading. There's so much to wonder about and so much mystery to unravel. The music and ambiance helps build tension, as well as the sense of fear and unease as you make your way through room after room of unrelenting nightmares. And at the very least, the plentiful collectibles will have you coming back for another playthrough if that's your kind of thing. Of course, not everything is perfect. I mentioned how awkward the pushing and pulling of items feels, and 6's movement on the whole can feel a bit loose and sloppy at times. And there's a glaring issue with the hints sometimes ruining the fun of discovery, with seemingly no way to turn them off. It's also not the most challenging game ever. It's pretty easy overall. Some sections take a few tries, but eventually you get through it, which is fine. I don't think the developers set out to make something as excruciatingly difficult as Dark Souls or Hollow Knight. But my few criticisms are really not enough to detract from how much this game does right. Little Nightmares is a game that sticks with you for a long time afterwards. It's a game that you wish you could forget just so you can experience it again for the first time. And in my opinion, that's a pretty rare and special thing. So what are your thoughts? Is Little Nightmares a masterpiece? Is it a dumpster fire? Or something in between? Let me know what you think down in the comments. If you like this video, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. It helps me out a lot and it really makes my day. If this video does well, maybe I'll take a look at the DLC or even the sequel. I'm very excited that the third installment was recently announced, but also skeptical because it's being developed by a new team. Only time will tell. Well, until then, I thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.